When you look at Haley and I, you just think, man, they really know a lot about TikTok. This is what I imagine when I think of a TikToker. And first of all, I'd like to say thank you, I guess. Second, as we'll see, TikTok was a little bit out of our comfort zone, but embracing it helped us connect with our students. So before we get to that, Haley is going to take you on a brief tour of Beloit College.
Yes, hi there. If I can get things to work. Here we go. So Beloit is a small private liberal arts college located on the state line of Beloit, Wisconsin. So state line of Wisconsin and Illinois on the hand there. Our full-time enrollment is slightly under 1,000 students, but we have 17% international students, 29% BIPOC, 24% first gen, and 25% Pell Grant recipients. So our population is pretty diverse. Beloit values a personalized experience. So within 72 hours after a student submits their deposit to Beloit College, they are matched based on general interests with a first-year advisor. So this advisor is just one member of that student's success team, and they help welcome the student into the Beloit community. So they are sharing resources, walking them through the process of registering for college, and kind of getting them all settled to move to campus in the fall. So really helping through that transition from a high school senior to a first year college student. And they point them to all these resources on campus, and one of those resources is the library. So this first year experience program is called AMP, or Advanced Mentoring Program. And it was introduced at Beloit in the fall of 2020. It replaced a more traditional first year seminar program. So during that student's first year, they take a quarter credit course with their matched advisor, which is designed to introduce them to college life. So as part of this, students attend AMP connection sessions from different departments. So recent examples of these AMP connection sessions are things like understanding your financial aid offer, welcome to the Writing Center, learning how to college. So in the library, we are fortunate enough to get to do several of these a year, or a semester rather. So we've done things like demystifying the research process, sharpening your BS detector, evaluating news in a post-truth era. And recently we did a presentation on book banning in libraries. So here I should mention that this program is required for first year students, but all students are welcome to join these AMP connection sessions. They're hosted during our common hour, usually, or we can host them off time in the evenings, but anyone can attend. But we do also have a program that specifically targets engagement for our second year students, and that is our sophomore retreat. So in higher ed, we've noticed this trend of second year students becoming disengaged with their college experience. So we've got, first year students enrolled in AMP, third year, they're studying abroad, they're taking courses in their major, they're preparing for internships. Fourth year, they are preparing to graduate, they're applying to fellowships and jobs and grad school. So there's really a gap in what we're offering for sophomore students. So Beloit's answer to address this programming gap is our sophomore retreat. So every year, the college invites the entire sophomore class to a resort in Lake Geneva, Wisconsin, which is about 40 miles away from our campus. And they offer a weekend of speakers, sessions, and events designed to re-engage these students in the education process. So this program is oftentimes the first true conference experience that our students get. And it really helps foster those connections, not only between students, but between students and our Beloit staff and faculty. So this past year, our library was invited to attend and present a session. And Kelly and I went to work designing a fun workshop that addressed a need that we saw in our students' education, media literacy. So in pursuit of a topic that was relevant to our students and that could support these media literacy concepts, we kept coming back to TikTok. So for those of you unfamiliar, TikTok is a video-based social networking platform with something for everyone, but like any good social media site, it's peppered with misinformation and disinformation that really spreads quickly through the trends feature. So before we could actually host a session on misinformation on TikTok, we actually had to join TikTok. So we became TikTokers. As Kelly alluded to, this was a little bit out of our comfort zone, but we really needed to experience it for ourselves. And I will say we got sucked in pretty quickly. So in between videos about library displays and fancy like dance challenges and Bridgerton inspired musical numbers, gripping stories about the tragic taco filled millennial dating scene, we sought out misinformation by searching for tags like COVID-19, vaccines, healthcare, and the election. Unfortunately, the TikTok algorithm is pretty quick to determine who you are. And it was super difficult to work around. So we kind of found ourselves in a filter bubble. So instead of finding videos with misinformation, we found videos by experts busting that and kind of correcting and fact checking those videos. So at this point, we decided we needed to kind of sit back and kind of let TikTok happen to us, let the misinformation find us. So we then followed tags about sustainable beauty, skincare, weightlifting, weight loss, and life hacks. So after endlessly scrolling through videos day after day, we finally found that questionable medical advice we were searching for. So we'll pass it back to Kelly.
So once we ironed out the wrinkles with the TikTok algorithm, we started seeing a lot of major trends throughout TikTok. And during the session, we wanted to highlight how different TikTok is for everyone. And so to start, we asked students to share any kind of health or wellness trend, or broadly whatever trend that they've been seeing recently on social media. And during this conversation, we were able to talk about how students interact with these posts and sort of shine a light on some of the evaluation techniques that they're already almost subconsciously using. And so this is a slide that we use to sort of share a taste of the multitude of trends that we encounter every day, or that Haley and I encountered during our 6 weeks on TikTok. During the brief moment that I had TikTok, I ended up watching a lot of doctors, dentists, dermatologists, and other experts debunk a lot of these trends. And I saw this type of video way more often than I actually encountered the original health trend. And after a conversation with students during one of our workshops, I learned that they don't necessarily see these expert opinions popping up in their algorithm. And in many cases, they just see people stitching the original video and trying the trend. And so that shows me that it was, can you go to the next slide? Thank you. Because many students aren't actually seeing these experts on social media, that giving students a tactic for analyzing this information is really important. And so we've all, as librarians, probably used a variety of techniques. There's like the CRAP test to the ABCs and different checklists. And those sources can be really useful for evaluating academic stuff, but they don't translate incredibly well to popular sources. And so in our media literacy workshops, we turned to the SIFT technique from Mike Caulfield to evaluate these sources. I'm going to share the link really quick to that. That has some more information, but I just showed this slide and we kind of talked through each of the letters. So the first step would be to stop and take a breath and think about what you've just seen or read. So then I give an example, like many of us, one of the first things I do in the morning is I turn to my phone, and while I'm not necessarily browsing TikTok, I'm checking out the news or Instagram to see what's happened while I was asleep. And my pre-caffeine sleepy brain is much more likely to take on that information and trust it without really digging into it. And so it's important that I stop, maybe make a cup of coffee, drink a glass of water, and then do a little bit more digging. And a part of this stopping is also deciding what I'm using this information for. Am I just being entertained by it? Or am I going to adjust my behavior and change how I think about the world? And if we're going to do that second thing, then it's really important that we dig in deeper, because we can't just take something at face value that's coming from a TikToker. So that brings us to the investigation. So taking a little bit of time to figuring out what you're looking at and where you're coming from, where it's coming from. So I ask students if this is a TikToker that they've seen before. Do they know this YouTuber? Can they do a quick online search to see if this person is who they say they are? Sometimes, especially in TikTok, I've noticed people will like straight up tell you what they're not. So they'll say, I'm not a doctor, but. So if that's the case, I tell students to try a quick search to actually find a doctor's opinion, which brings us to finding better or more complete coverage. So trying to find something from a more credible publication or publications, or trying to find what the expert consensus is. And it's also about sort of tracing the claims. A lot of times what we see is just a snippet of a larger story. And we talk about this a lot, in information literacy sessions where we talk about the headline of a research study, and then you go back to actually see what the research study said. As we'll see, it often feels like these trends have played a game of massive telephone. So there is a small snippet of truth at the very beginning of the line that just gets more and more muddled the more it's shared and on the different platforms that it's shared. Can you go to the next slide? Thank you. So this is the example TikTok that we used during our sessions. We chose it because it's not too serious, and also wisdom teeth removal is something that's relatively universal for all of our students and ourselves. Everybody has a story about wisdom teeth, and because of this activity, Haley and I have sure heard a lot of them. So Haley, if you can play.
Run and get pineapple juice if we're getting your wisdom teeth out.
Penny, how you feel? I feel great. Lobo, how you feel?
Just like $1 million, Denny.
So after we watch this TikTok in class, we have a discussion with our students about this trend, asking if they've heard of it, have they done it, what other things can you do to help with swelling and bruising, and what questions come to mind when you see this? What do you think can influence swelling? And in all of our sessions, I think, students had heard of someone who did this, and we even once had a student who like tried this trick. So the next step is sort of introducing introducing the activity. So here's an example of one of our true trend posters. So during the rest of the session, students are going to select and investigate and create a graphic. But whenever we're going to ask students to do something, we often will do it ourselves. So this is an example that we made, which is, I think, a pretty good example of the telephone effect. So bromelain is in pineapple. Bromelain has been studied as an anti-inflammatory. Therefore, drinking a lot of pineapple juice, like a gallon, is going to help you with swelling, kind of ignoring the fact that bromelain has only been studied in supplement form. And so then we get to the conclusion. And the conclusion is that this is probably not going to hurt you long-term. It's not going to help you. You're probably going to get a stomach ache and an upset mouth because of the acidity and the sugar, which is really the last thing that you want after you've already had oral surgery. But this is just showing an example to students of what they can create. So next we'll introduce the activity. So these are the instructions. Haley and I taught these sessions in person, which allowed us to be really broad with our instructions because we were able to sort of walk around and nudge students with different ideas. But we also included a handout, which I will share in the chat when I find it. And you're more than welcome to adapt and use that handout if you'd like, absolutely. But this sort of gave some framework of what we wanted students to do, which is just create something. They could have created it with Adobe Spark, with a pen and paper. I would have loved if someone made a TikTok, but I think that takes longer than like 35 minutes. Not that I know. So it was just a quick sort of activity where they're going to analyze these sources, include a citation, and then eventually they presented to the rest of the group. So on the next slide, we have some photographs from the session. And this just sort of shows how people work together as groups. Because we were in person, we actually had some interaction between the groups, which was really great. And we had students trying a lot of different trends. And sometimes over the course of different workshops, we had students doing the same trends. So studying garlic up the nose or whatever. We also sometimes ended up showing the TikToks in class if that was necessary. Sometimes they were just so well known that we didn't really need to. I would offer a disclaimer on that sometimes they're really gross. The garlic up the nose was really pretty nasty. I've now seen it like 5 times, so I'd like to forget that. But what we had students do at the end is present their trend to the rest of the group. And we were able to have sort of conversations about this. And coming from a student success point, this was a really great way for students that didn't know each other to work together and collaborate on something and do this research and have to sort of effectively communicate it with a group of people that they didn't necessarily know.
I think my favorite comment out of this whole kind of experience was, oh yeah, I tried that. I went there because my mom wouldn't answer the phone. So I had a cold, she wouldn't answer. So I tried the garlic up the nose thing and it was, it was what it was. So you'll learn a lot about your students. It's kind of a fun way to engage. So our results. This activity really kind of worked. We presented once at sophomore retreat and twice in our AMP connections. And I think Kelly and I had kind of chatted beforehand about what we wanted to do in the session. And so our main goal was engagement and like having students work together. So we really spent less than 10 minutes talking about evaluating and fact checking. Letting students spend that time to discuss the trend, discuss what they had seen on TikTok, create their visualization. It took about 30 to 35 minutes. And then we spent the last time, like 8 to 10 minutes, kind of letting students present their findings. So this led to maximum participation and engagement. It also gave us an opportunity to kind of chat one-on-one with groups about different information literacy concepts. So things like the filter bubble came up quite often, and things like internet privacy. How does the algorithm know that I am interested in weightlifting, for example? So these are concepts that we would love to address in all of our instruction sessions in the classroom, but oftentimes faculty kind of limit us as to, they need to be able to find empirical research on X, Y, and Z, and you've got 30 minutes to do that. So we're not always able to address these concepts in these general sessions. So we like to take the time when we can to really, really talk about those. I think the most important thing that happened was that students who attended this session came back. So that was something that we were really proud of. These students came back for other AMP sessions. They came back for events like our Night Against Procrastination and we just had a lemonade stand the other day for Spring Day, and we saw students from these sessions specifically come to say hi and talk about what had been going on in their lives. And then we've had research appointments with these students. We're helping them beyond kind of this 1 hour interaction that we've had, kind of go through some of their other classes. That was pretty successful. And I think talking about it, we plan to continue to offer the section next year as new AMP students come into the program. So we might change our sophomore retreat kind of program because we're seeing the first years now transition into that second year time, but we're gonna have new first years, and this is kind of a fun way to kind of get to know them.
I just wanted to add something really quickly to Haley's last slide. So in one of those pictures, you can see that we posted and shared all of our students, the sources that they created, the infographics that they created. And right now we have an activity going where students are adding new infographics and doing the research as well as part of our activity table. So now that you know how this activity works, we're going to take on a TikTok trend together. So earlier this week, Haley and I found a new trend to analyze, which is drinking aloe vera juice to improve skin and digestive health. I also just want to mention that this trend has over 16 million views on TikTok. So can you play for me?
You gotta listen to me right now. I know it's all over TikTok, but aloe vera juice. I've been taking this for like a week and a half now. I take a shot of it in the morning, like 1 ounce, and then 1 ounce at night. And I don't have the beauty filter on right now, and my skin was really broken out just last week, and it's cleared up a ton since then. And also my digestive system, like my gut health, never been better. Never been better. Aloe vera juice. I get this from Whole Foods, but you can also get it, I know they sell it at Trader Joe's, and I think you can get it probably on Amazon and stuff like that. But I just take about this much morning and night. It doesn't even taste bad either. Well, there's like a little kick to it, you know what I mean? But it's not horrible. It's not horrible at all. Very doable. Aloe vera juice. Yeah, try it out.
So just immediately, one of the concerns I have is that that's what she thinks a shot is. So that makes me worried for our college students. But if we were in a class, what we would ask is our students, what questions do you have about this trend? Like what immediately comes to mind? So if you want to, you can use the chat. If you are feeling brave, you can also unmute yourself and add some comments. We're happy for that too. Some of the other questions that you could think about is, yeah, how would you start a conversation with students about this? Yeah, how does aloe vera juice relate to gut and acne? Yeah, it's like a miracle cure if you ask this person. It's gonna fix your gut health. It's gonna, yeah. How broken out was she really before? One of the other things that Haley and I noticed is, you know, at the end of the video, she talks about how her skin is just glowing and it looks like she just put moisturizer on. So there's a little bit of, you know, Instagram or social media filter magic happening, I think. But also, yeah, what harmful things could happen to you if you drink this? Does only the juice work? And what about an aloe vera plant? Absolutely. Yep, are there scientific studies? Exactly. So what we then would have our students do is we would then take some time and have them do some research on this. Haley, do you want to go to the next slide maybe? So, sorry, I'm just going to talk a little bit about this because I want to talk about the finding resources. For this session, we focused on finding sources that were from the popular free web, as opposed to diving too fully into those scholarly sources. We did this sort of because we didn't have a lot of time to really start talking about source analysis, and also because we wanted to introduce research to these students without having to dive incredibly deeply into credibility analysis. So we focused on finding a source that has like a lot of different doctors that are cited and maybe some doctors that you can go and search. And also one thing that our students ended up doing a lot better than I think Haley and I were able to during our time on TikTok is they would like be able to find the original video really quickly. And then they would go and analyze the different videos that they saw. So they were still working within TikTok, but it was just a different level of analysis than I think Haley and I were expecting at the beginning. Sorry, I sort of stepped on your slide, Haley.
No, you're all good. I think the thing I would add to that is that we are always cognizant of the idea of information privilege. So while our students are here at Beloit College, they have access to 206 different paid database subscriptions that they can find information in. But Kelly and I really want our students to be prepared to be good researchers after they graduate. And so they may not have access to these paid database subscriptions. And so we really need them to kind of be able to search the free web and find credible information there for that lifelong success. Not to mention, as you're bleary-eyed rolling out of bed at noon in the morning, whatever time you wake up, our students wake up a lot earlier than I do actually. but you're not gonna go to the library database and look up aloe vera juice and health benefits there. So we've also got things like our own experience that kind of combat some of this this information that we're finding. So yeah, moisture does kind of help the skin. Like that's true. My mom taught me that. I see that through my own experience. Dermatologists will have you use vitamin E, which is just essentially another moisturizer. You could take it in pill form. So we do have to think about kind of the lens of our own experience and kind of talk about that with students. So we noticed, especially with like international students that have different, so like alternative medicines that they're embracing, we do have to talk about that, and we have to talk about it in a sensitive way that's not saying, you know, Western medicine is the only answer. You know, we had students that talked about putting onions in their armpits for something.
It's supposed to give you a fever.
Give you
You don't have to go to school.
Oh, it makes so much sense. But yeah, like that's something that we don't want to step on anybody's kind of cultural knowledge or experience, but we do want to have students thinking about how to take in information and then interpret it, so that they're not sharing things with their friends that are inherently harmful or dangerous. So a few other considerations we had completed posters that really helped students visualize what they were supposed to be making. Sometimes we don't do that. We just, you know, hand them blank pieces of paper and Kelly says, draw the internet, and they don't know where to start. But sometimes cool things come out of that. For this, we only had a finite amount of time. So we wanted to kind of give them a head start on kind of visualizing what they were supposed to be creating. Other things, TikTok trends are always changing. So refreshing your examples often is important, because as I was talking about like the Bridgerton musical earlier, that's so 3 months ago. And if you mention it now, you're uncool. I've been uncool a lot of times during these TikTok sessions. If you are not super comfortable getting on TikTok, you can always use BuzzFeed or other news sites that are evaluating things. Most recently, we heard about NyQuil chicken, which if you Google is probably the most disgusting photo you'll see today. It's supposed to make you sleepy. I don't know. Not all students will be on TikTok. So as not all librarians will be on TikTok, our students have different opinions on what social media platforms are cool or whether they're going to be on them at all for privacy reasons. So we did branch out to include YouTube Shorts, Instagram Reels, and we also had some students evaluating like Instagram posts. So things like, do these foods help improve brain activity, and kind of just a like infographic form. So those are some things that you could do to replicate this activity at your own institution. That is kind of what we had for today, but we are happy to answer questions that you may have, or share more insights from the TikTok underbelly.
Thank you so much, Haley and Kelly. This was a great session. Really exciting, and it seems like it can go a long way to kind of helping with library anxiety and some of those issues, which it sounds like you've had a lot of success with. That's really interesting. If people have questions, you can please go ahead and share those in the chat. We do have a few minutes remaining for our presenters to respond to questions.
Yeah, so the context of these sessions, we were just kind of asked to present anything that our students could attend. So the real point of AMP is to get students out on campus meeting different resources. And so it could be about literally anything. So we have a lot of like one-off sessions about things going on in current events, or so like discussions about Ukraine, for example, was a session. Discussions about Black Lives Matter was like 8 sessions. So we have different things, but you could also talk about like, you know, welcome to the library, here's a tour. So it's kind of open-ended. And that kind of gives us the opportunity to kind of play. I think for the most part, the library sessions are more like hands-on activity based rather than like lecture or even discussion based. But that's kind of the context. Kelly, did you have anything to add there?
Yeah, I'll just add that AMP stands for Advanced Mentoring Program. It's our first year experience course. And we changed up our FYE last year, but this is our first year of having people actually on campus participating in it. So we just have to do things a little differently. So one of the questions I see is, did the students that we saw later discuss how they were more cautious of what they see on TikTok, or did they seem to be more cautious? I think that they seem to be more cautious. They seem to be thinking about it a little bit more, and just even doing that practice of like stopping before they're like, hey, let me share this. And that's really what we want, is for people to sort of help stop disinformation. And a lot of that comes from just realizing where it's like coming from. Haley, do you have anything to add?
Yeah, I think it's interesting as you see students come back, they're not necessarily trying these things in the first place. So like dry scooping is the act of, before you go and work out, it's a pre-workout powder that you take like a shot, only this one's actually shot sized. So maybe there is hope for a student population. But you just take it and then swish some water in your mouth. You take it as a dry powder. It's super dangerous. It's like the cinnamon challenge when I was in high school, but you can inhale it into your lungs and aspirate, and it actually doesn't help with the workout. So our students had seen that. They weren't necessarily trying it. And so I think approaching this as like an experience of like, you are not necessarily doing this, but let's talk about how you could process this information so that when you see aloe vera juice, for example, or lettuce tea or something that's more benign, but maybe easier to try and more applicable to more people, they're able to kind of evaluate and process. Sorry, that didn't really track, but I think it's important to realize that not all trends are going to necessarily apply to our students, which is why we offered kind of a variety of the dangerous and the benign and the obscure and the like sun contouring. Not a lot of students had heard about that. But that's when you don't put sunscreen on certain parts of your face that you can get burnt and tanned in the like perfect places. So yeah, it's scary, the things that we saw out there. Don't TikTok alone. That's my advice.
So someone asked how many students are usually in the sessions. It sort of varied, probably hovering around between 12 and 15. One of the issues with AMP is that there's almost a lot of competition to get students to your AMP sessions. But that was actually a really good size group for both the space that we have in the library, but also for working in smaller groups. At the sophomore retreat conference, we had a much larger space and more students, and so they were able to really bunch up into their own little groups and get their Chromebooks out and work on things.
So one of the questions was about authority being constructed and contextual. One of the things that we really benefited from is, so Beloit's, like I said, a small school, and we know a lot of the students that are coming into sessions. They're library student workers, or they're students that we've seen in instruction sessions or research appointments. And so we were able to go into this and build off of some of those experiences and interactions that we've had before. So for authority being constructed and contextual, we usually talk about like Paris Hilton or RuPaul. And so those are other touch points that students recognize and can apply in different workshops. And so most of the students that we had seen for this TikTok activity kind of remembered back when we had talked about those things in previous sessions. But yeah, we do talk about kind of the authority. So TikTok, as Kelly mentioned, works by stitching videos. And so we found maybe not necessarily the original video, but responses to that. And so in that, there is a range of authority that you'll find. So the original video might be the misinformation, but in subsequent videos, there's maybe a doctor or a parent that's saying, you know, where's the citation for this? So there's a trend, oh my God, citation needed. And that's one of my favorite TikTok hashtags to follow, just because it's really funny. But yeah, there was conversation about who in the stitched videos was the authority and how that changes for different perspectives and different contexts.
So Holly asked about the TikTok trend topics. We provided a handful. We actually provided a link to a Google Drive with some saved videos, but we were open to students bringing their own that they wanted to do. So there was one, I don't remember exactly what it was, but it was actually horrifying, about Benadryl. And our students, they said, we want to research this, and we said, great. So it's both. But in the interest of time, because we're working on it with less than an hour, we did provide them, but we didn't limit students to that. Also because we're late sometimes, also because we're late to new trends.
Yeah.
Because we're old.
Something else that I would just briefly mention, this wasn't part of our goal when we started, but during the sophomore retreat, we had staff sit in sometimes on those sessions, and they participated in the activity as well. And so sometimes our staff and our faculty could benefit from sessions like this, and we kind of saw some of that coming up. So they were using more like Instagram and Facebook posts rather than TikTok, but the activity was still kind of the same, and it kind of worked nicely that we could all kind of have a discussion about similar things. Oh, Kelly, getting addicted to TikTok.
Oh, we were addicted. This is why you don't TikTok alone, I think, because Haley and I, we both got TikTok on the same day. I'm not a big social media user. I have Instagram, but I could delete it tomorrow and probably be okay. And so I was really worried about this, and we definitely found ourselves getting pulled up in the rabbit hole of TikTok. Immediately after our first session at sophomore retreat, I deleted it because I just would sit there and endlessly scroll. And I think Haley didn't necessarily delete it, but doesn't use it anymore because that did happen. I mean, it's the problem with these algorithms are that they're really good. And so we definitely found ourselves getting sucked into it. But I think having this, working with Haley and knowing that we didn't necessarily like that was really useful. And also we've had the conversation with students so much about these different social media platforms, and really is this where you want to give your time? Is this where you want to give your data to? And so falling back on some of those conversations was really helpful to get out of it as well.
I have a sister who is of the age of our students. And so she sends me TikToks routinely to view. So I've not deleted TikTok, but I would not say that I am addicted to it or that I get on there for any length of time. I probably limit myself to 2 or 3 minutes as I open it, maybe once or twice every month. So that wasn't a huge concern for me. I have other social media channels that take up most of my time, but yeah, it is. Oh, Elise Myers, you probably saw the taco dating story, and that was my introduction to TikTok, and that really sucked me in. So if you want to see some of these trends, you could look them up on YouTube or Instagram or TikTok, but I highly recommend just perusing briefly. It's an experience. Yes, absolutely. Recreate this. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of different ways you could riff off of it, but the worksheet that Kelly made is licensed with Creative Commons, so you're free to adapt and let us know how it goes. If you find any good trends we can use, we can share. So all right, thank you so much.
Thank you both so much for sharing your work with us and this great conversation too. Thanks everyone for attending, and hope to see you at more sessions this afternoon.